for sure. All right, we're back. We are MAPD714 in the fall 2017 semester. That's iOS programming, like fundamentals. And we are week 6, part 1 of our broadcast. We're talking about using tab bars and pickers today. Now, you might say, like, why are we going through these little controls so slowly? Because it's not like Android, right? Tab bars and pickers are actually quite complex to put together. And because there's a bit of code in the background, and if you actually take a look at the little PowerPoint I put up, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of code we have to do today. And I want to talk about the code a lot more. We can type it in. We'll type in the code. But also what I want to go through with you guys is why things work the way they do in Swift, how they look, and why the things are happening the way they are. At the end, there are 5 different tabs that we're going to make. But we're only going to do 4 of them. The 5th one is a game that they do in the book, which I'm not going to cover, right? Which is kind of a custom picker, which allows you to do other things. And I'm sure you can kind of figure out most of it on your own. One thing I have put up on the Slack channel is a week6.zip file. If you want to look there, that is the data that we're going to need for one of the tabs, as well as the icons we're going to use for the picker. Okay. All right, let's get to it. So we're going to make a new Xcode project. Here we are. We're still going to use this single view app we've been using. One thing to note is some of these other apps, like the tabbed app and like the master detail app, they actually give us some of the stuff we'll be doing this week and next week. The next week we get together. So those 2 things are kind of like a scaffold. That's what these 2 things do. Single view app doesn't give you much, but these ones, this one, page-based app, the tab app, and the master detail app, they give you actual additional, things right from the get-go, right? But the great thing about starting with the single view application, really nice thing about that is we build things from scratch. Okay, we build things from scratch as opposed to using Apple's built-in stuff. We don't know what the hell's going on, right? We're going to use the basic single view app and build up from there. And I like that the book does that. Okay, so click next. We're going to, of course, I'm going to call it MAPD714-F2017, and it's going to be lesson 6, but you can call it pickers, right? That's what it is. I'm going to use Swift. I'm not going to use core data or unit tests or anything like that. Again, click next. I'm going to save it. And I'm back to making my app. Now, remember last week what we did? We got rid of our view controller and made another one for ourselves, right? That's what we did. This time we're going to take a slightly different approach. I'm not going to follow the book exactly, but I'm going to show you what I can do here. So we have our little storyboard, right? That's what this looks like. And believe it or not, you can get rid of this thing too, right? I mean, just because we kind of did the other one last week. Last week, we kind of took care of the view controller. This week, we're going to get rid of this. Just kind of click here and press delete. So delete. No scenes. So when you look at that, you're like, oh my God, what the heck? What happened? I have no scene in my storyboard. Nothing's going to pop up. And it's true, right? We also have to make a change to our view controller.swift. Before I make something else, notice that the view controller, like normal, it comes up with our UI kit view controller, and then there's the UI view controller that it's inheriting from, right? This is the inheritance factor right here. Let's see if I can actually scroll this up. I cannot. But instead of using UI view controller, we want to make this tabbed control. And the tab control is actually showing you this little toolbar at the bottom. And you're going to tab between one and the other one, right? So if I actually click on this and start typing UI tab bar controller, that's what I really want. I want to inherit from tab bar controller, not UI view controller. Now, the great thing is about UI tab bar controller, it actually is the same. It comes from the same superclass as view controller, UI view controller, but it adds additional functionality that the UI view controller does not have. Okay, so allowing us to connect this thing. I'm just going to get rid of some of these comments right now to make it nice and easy. In fact, just to make room, I'm going to get rid of this did and receive memory warning, right? So we just can use the simplest of code, right? All right, so that's the first part. I'm going to put all this on GitHub in a bit, but so the first part is we've changed it from UI view controller to a different one, a different superclass, UI tab bar controller. Okay, next in our main storyboard, we're going to look at our library over here. And if I go tab bar, right? Tab bar controller, see this one right here? Tab bar controller. And I pull this over, look what happens. I get this really weird, different kind of layout. Okay, so if I take my tab bar and drop it into my empty storyboard now, I get this, right? Which is kind of cool, right? Okay, what the heck is this? And this is where we take the, kind of depart from the thing. I'm going to bring it a little bit smaller so you can see it here on your screen a little bit more. It's kind of hard to see too because when I'm projecting, it's a little bit different than what you can see. But you notice that there is this main root controller right here, which is kind of what we did last week, right? But instead of creating these little lines, you didn't see these little lines before. Those lines are called segue lines, right? And what they do is they connect between our main root controller. Think about this as the parent controller to all the other ones, right? We don't actually drag and drop any other controls in here. All we have here is this tab bar at the bottom. But notice that we also have a tab bar on each of these ones. So here's item 1 and item 2, and here's item 1 and item 2. So notice like these views here, this one and this one, relate to the buttons in here. So remember what's going to happen. Anything I put inside this view is going to pop into this area in the container, in the root container. That's what's happening. Okay. Also notice this. If I click on this little connection, right, and if I go to my inspectors, there's a couple things you can see here, right? So I click on the inspector, and as I connect to one or the other, right? If I double click on this, or if I zoom, this one here is an actual segue, right? So this connection that I have, this connection line, provides me additional information, which I will talk about in a bit. You can actually change the type of connection this is, all right? Eventually, we're going to get there. But I just want to point out these connection lines are segues, different kinds of control links to the main root controller. All right, well, we want to add 5 of these things in the bottom, right? So to prepare, we're always going to build our user interface first. So if I ever do a little test with you, like in-house assignment test, first thing I want you to do is build your UI. Remember, you always work on your user interface first, no logic, as much as possible. And then you put all your logic afterwards. Why is that better? Because you get your stuff started scaffolding it out, and then you can add your logic as you go. Okay, and it's actually quicker too. Because if you add your logic piece by piece, sometimes what ends up happening is, it takes a lot longer for you to figure things out. Okay, so we've got these 2. I want to add 3 more, right? It only comes with 2. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to go here back to the this little thing, and instead of getting another tab bar controller, that doesn't make any sense. I just want a basic view controller. So if I take away this, and if I look at view controller, right, and I drag and drop it in here, I get another one of these things, right? But notice that there's no tab bar on the bottom, right? There's no tab bar on the bottom. I need to create that. And the way to do that is take the controller, the main controller here, and if I control drag to this one, right, from the main controller down to this one, you can see that it's going to bring up a little menu. And one that you want is the relationship segue. Remember I talked about those connecting lines as a segue? You're going to choose view controllers. Okay, so bam. Now what it does is it makes an extra item. That's what it does. This is the way you do it. And again, if I want to move this thing around, I can move it anywhere I like. In fact, the order doesn't really matter where you put everything. Okay, so that's this piece. Next, let's do another one. So another one. And we'll do the same thing with these ones. So I'll drag and drop a control drag from this one, make it a relationship segue. It's going to get pretty cluttered in a second, right? So let me just bring this out so you can see the relationship with everything. So here's this main one. I'm going to bring this out. You can actually arrange these any which way you want. I'm just going to pull these around. And it's going to be hard for some of you to see this, but it's okay. I just want to make sure that I make room so you guys can see everything here. So I'm going to bring these things so that they're next to each other, right? And I'm going to bring the last one in here. So I'm going to kind of take the last controller and bring it in here, right? And I'm going to drag in our control drag from here to there. And again, choose view controllers in the relationship. Are you with me? It's pretty simple, right? So all I've done is created a container, and it's hard to see here, but again, I'm projecting, but it's if I zoom in a little bit so you can see, what I've done is I've created the root controller was created by the tab bar controller, right? And each of these other items, that's why it says item 1, item 2, and so on, they're created, they're going to be the, kind of like where the buttons are going to take us to. So here's all the buttons, and these things are going to take us to all those things, right? Okay, here's the problem. Do you see the arrow? There's no arrow on the left here, right? Remember, we need that entry point. And we can assign the entry point by going to the inspector. So with our tab bar controller selected, if you go to the inspector and if you scroll down, you can see that there's an area that says is initial view controller. Please click that. Now the arrow comes back. Okay, this is important because otherwise your app will never start, right? Okay, so that's all I've done is check this little button here, right here. All right, so we've got our view controller.swift, this one, view controller.swift, and it's a UI bar controller, but we haven't told our main storyboard that our root controller is this controller. And back into the identity side, so if I click this, and if I go click on the identity tab right here, you can see that there's a little custom class over here that I can pull down. And the one I want is view controller, the original one that I had. So this basically says that the view controller, this one here, right, is linked to the root controller of my storyboard. That's what it's telling you, right? That's how I did it. So that's how I connected. Remember, we have our front, the user interface, and we have our code behind file. And the code behind file is our view controller file. It's the logic behind our view, right? And that's what we've done here. We just linked it together by looking at the, again, the identity inspector over here and selecting it like we did last time, like last week. Are you with me? Now, the next part. I want to create 4 more files that are empty, right? 4 more view controllers. Each view controller that's going to connect to each of the user interface controllers, right? So let's do that. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the little folder, this little yellow folder here inside the project view. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click new file. Now, last time the way we did it was we clicked the Swift file, right? Which gave us this empty Swift file with Foundation. We imported Foundation, and I told you we kind of made it from scratch. This time we're going to click on Cocoa Touch class over here, right? And we're going to click next. And instead of our view controller, the class, we're going to call it different things. For example, I believe they call it the date. Let's just go to the PowerPoint to make sure it's correct. So just so you don't get mad at me, right? I just can't remember the names. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be making 5 different views, right? But the first one that you want is, and we're going to talk about delegates and data sources in a second, but I just wanted to create some of these things first before we get going. And then I'll switch back to that file in a second. So if it's called, just to make sure what it is, so the UI view controller, and what did they name it? Date picker view controller. There we go. So we're going to call that date picker view controller. And I notice that the subclass, we're going to keep it as UI view controller, but you can actually pick any of the subclasses in our UI kit by default, right? Also, notice we're not going to click on this also create zip file. Remember what a zip file is? It's a nib file, which is another storyboard. So we can create a new storyboard for each one of these things if we want, right? Which doesn't make any sense. The language is Swift. You also have a choice of choosing Objective-C, or we're only going to choose Swift. And when I click next, it's going to ask me where I want it. I'm going to put it inside this group. Okay, you can also choose somewhere else. And just leaving the default, I'm going to click create. When I do that, you're going to see that the new file is going to appear inside your solution. And I'm going to pull it up so that it's just underneath the view controller.swift. extra stuff I got this time around. I'm just going to clean it up because I don't need any of this stuff, right? But I'm going to just show you that you get a did receive memory error, you get the view did load, you get all kinds of extra comments, but all we really need is this part right here. Okay? Why am I doing it this way? So you can see two different ways of scaffolding out your classes, right? Remember, this is the code behind file for your code. Now, this is a lot different than Android, all right? Android doesn't do it this way at all, right? They almost like have one major file, so to speak, that controls everything. You can have more than one file, of course, one for each view if you want to, but you don't have to. Here, you kind of do because each view kind of appears and is generated as its own container. Think about each view as its own world, right? Like literally has its own stuff. Everything is unique. It has its own coordinate system. It has its own constraints. It has everything by itself. And that's a lot different than Android, especially with the whole fragments thing that Android does, which is totally different. Okay, so so this is one. I want to do 4 more, and if I'm not wrong, they kind of list what they're going to be right here. So in your PowerPoint, it says single component picker view. Let's do that. You guys go and do this. Double component picker view, dependent component picker view, and we'll add the custom picker view last, but we're not going to do this. We're not going to implement this one, okay? So I'm going to bring this a little closer so you guys can see. These are the ones I want to make. So single, double, and dependent component picker view. Woo! They're massive. So how do I do that again? Same thing. So I'm going to right-click here, new file, right? Cocoa Touch class, next. And then it's single component picker view. Massive, right? I'm going to click next and create. And I'm going to do it again. And I'll do them all. And then I'll come back and clean up. Right, so single. And again, I'll go this way. And I'll call this double component picker view. All I'm doing is adding files, right? And I'll do another one. And this will be the, did I call it dependent? Yeah, dependent component. Dependent component picker view. Right, and again, you can look at the PowerPoint if you want to skip ahead. And custom picker view controller, right? Custom picker view. So new file, next, custom picker view controller, okay? I'm accepting all the defaults, and I have all these different views, and what I want to do is just going to organize them so they're one underneath the other, like this. And again, this is not affecting the actual file system. It's just affecting the way we see it in our solution. Okay, so our solution might display this way, but in the file system, it doesn't display this way at all, right? It's just our friendly way of seeing our stuff. While I'm doing this, you guys can go and create them. What I'm going to do is clean them up because I don't care about any of this stuff right now. Okay, so just cleaning them up so that they're easier for you guys to view online, right? So I don't need any of these comments for now, right? And I'm just going to clean them up so that way, again, this is now normally we'd like comments because we want to kind of, especially your name and all that stuff. That's really, really important to see who did it, student ID, when you're doing an assignment. But for this one, all I want to do is just clean this up a little bit so that there's not a lot of room for stuff. Let me save this one too. Okay, so if you want to do this, you can. I'm just giving you time to create your stuff anyway. Right? Nice and tight. Okay, so just killing this stuff here. And I don't care about the did receive memory warning. Excellent. Okay, so that's all of them. But guess what? None of these are connected. None of them. They're not connected at all to all the views we made. We got to do all that now. Let's do it. So how do I do that? I'm going to go to my main storyboard, and I'm going to pick one at a time, right? So here's the first one. In fact, this may not be the best way of doing it. Let me just bring this little outliner up for a second. Let me just kill this part for a second. Notice that I have my view controller scene. So my view controller scene is my root controller, if you will, right? and I have a tab bar that's right here. If I click on any one of these things, it kind of takes me right there, which is kind of cool. So this is the root controller scene. And then I have item 1, item 2, and then a bunch of items over here, right? So here's item 1. And item 1 picks me to this one. This is going to be my date picker, right? So I'm going to go down here. And if you notice on the item itself, I can click onto it. It's a little star. And if I bring up my inspector for a second, you can see that the bar item has a title, which is item 1. So I don't want that. I want date. Right? I'm supposed to just type in date in there. And when I do that, not only does it change the name of my little icon, but also change the name of my whole scene right away. Okay? So it says date. But it's not connected to anything. And if I go to my identity inspector, notice that my class doesn't point to anything right now, right? Because if I click on my scene, here's my class. I want to make sure that it points to the date picker view controller. So click that. Okay, so there's my date. Clicks on my date picker view controller. That's connecting my logic to my user interface. That's what I'm doing here. Now that's just for the first one. Okay, that's for my first item. Let's do the next one. And item 2, just in order, is going to be my single component pick controller, or this one here. Okay, so it's my item number 2. And this is going to be called single. So I'm going to click on down in here inside the document window. I'm just going to hide this one just so I get more real estate here, not because I need you to hide it. And notice there's item number 2, item 2. I'm going to go to my inspector here on the right, and I'm changing item 2 to single. Let's say single, right? And then I'm going to go on the top where this little yellow icon is on the top, and I'm going to click on my identity inspector and change this to single. Where is it? Here it is, single component picker. Okay, so I'm just aligning those things one at a time. That's the second one. And the third one would be double. So now let's see where the third one is. Doesn't matter which one it is, but I want the third one, right? Now the third one, if I remember correctly, went somewhere down here, but it doesn't matter. If I want to click that one, right? I want this one. You can see that all of them are in the middle. This is just item, 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 right? So, but I want it to be the third one. You can rearrange them, by the way, later on. But for now, this is the one, right? This one right here. And it's item scene is right here. This is the one that says item scene. I'm going to go down to item. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to change this to double. Single, oops, double, if I can type. There we go. I'm going to go back to the top of it, click on the little yellow icon, and then change my identity to double. And luckily, it's the third one. There it is. And now I'm going to go to this one, the fourth one. Remember, I know how I added them in. I added this one next, and then finally this one. So I'm clicking this one here. I'm going to go to the item, and this is dependent. So I'm going to click on the middle one, go to my title, and change this to dependent. It's dependent. And I'm going to go to the top of that one, click on the little yellow icon, go to the identity inspector, and change it to dependent component pick view controller. This one. One more. I'm going to go to the custom one, right? Here it is. Click on the item on the bottom, go to the attributes inspector, scroll down to where it says item, and change this to custom. Here it is, custom. And then I'm going to go up to the top to the yellow little icon, click onto that, go to the identity inspector, and choose custom. Hey, that's pretty cool. We've actually connected all of our logic to our user interfaces right now. Still, we're not ready. We're still not ready, because if I was to run this code right now, our little icons at the bottom, right, are like, there's no icon. And I gave you this file. Remember, I dropped it on Slack. It's a little zip file. And what it looks like is an image set that looks like this. It has a bunch of stuff. If you unzip it, there's an image set and a state dictionary. Leave the state dictionary alone. I don't care about that. I'm just going to move this back to where we were over here. All right, so let's get back into that little folder. So if I go back into that little folder, which is what you see here. Hold on a second. Here's all my sources. But if you go into the image sets, it looks like this, right? So what I want you to do now is pull up this again, go to your assets, XC assets on the left, and where it says app icon, I want you to drag and drop all of these by selecting them all and drag and dropping all these folders right into this right here. And what you're going to get is something that looks like this. Can I repeat it? Yeah, you're going to click on assets, XC assets. You're gonna go to Slack to get them. Did you get them already from Slack? Go get them from Slack first, because you can't do it without them, right? And once you unzip it from Slack, right, you're going to grab it from Slack. What you're going to do is you're going to take your assets for week 6, right? And it's inside of an image set. Here it is right here. I'm going to just drag all these things into XC assets, drag from here into there. Okay, this is going to give us some assets to play with so we can make our icons, but you can also make them on your own. All right, so in your UI UX class, I'm not sure if he's going to talk about how to create icons at all, but if you don't, we can talk about that a little bit today. Make our own icons, no problem. But let's take a look at this. So if you notice, I have these image sets, the apple, the bar, the cherry, all these things. Part of it is for this video game that they wanted you to make with the custom icon. We just don't have time for that today because we have other things to talk about. But if you notice, when I pulled it over, it created all these images. And now because they're part of our resources, these are all part of our app resources, I can use them, right? So going back to our main storyboard, now that I have them, right? Here's my document outline. Here's my document outline. And I want to look at my first one, which is the date scene. My date scene, I'm going to click on the date. I'm going to click on the date icon, right? Notice this right here. And if I go to my inspector, my attributes inspector, there's a little area that says image underneath the bar item. In bar item, there's two parts. There's the tab bar item and there's the bar item. I want to go to the bar item. And under where it says date, there's a little image area. I just pulled down the image that's going to be the clock icon. Now it's going to look like a little clock. Let's do it for the rest of them. I'm going to go back to single. I'm going to go back to the single icon right here. Over here on the right where the bar item is, I'm going to choose single. And I'm going to do it for the rest of them. You guys can probably guess what they are, but we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back to double, go back to my image icon, and then click on double icon. There we go. It says 2. It's a number 2. And we got single, we got date, we got double. Let's go dependent. All right, so we're going to go to the dependent one, click on the dependent icon itself, go down here, and there is a dependent icon. There we go, dependent. And the last one is going to be a custom one. So we're going to click on custom. But instead of being a custom icon, it's going to be a tool icon. It's going to look like a tool, like this, tool icon. All right, so now your app root controller should look like this on the bottom, right? And if I zoom in here, just to show you what the icons do, they actually changed the way the app looks quite nicely, right? So that you have these bottom icons in here. And you know what? A lot of iOS apps look like this. You have some kind of weird icon on the bottom, right? I don't know, it doesn't matter whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn or 10 other apps. A lot of them use this tab bar kind of, super navigator controller. right? That's what it is. And if you notice, our root controller wraps, it's a wrap around everything else, right? Our root controller wraps around all the other view controllers inside of our storyboard. So these are our relationships as an example, right? I can click on all the segues individually, right? Right? Here's all the segues. I can click on them. Later on, we're going to find out how to control them, right? Notice that there's no linkages or anything else up here right now, but we will be able to do something with them later. Okay. All right, cool. So this is the first part. The first part is setting up our app. Let's test it. I'm going to target iPhone 8 Plus, right? Actually, let's target iPhone 8 this time around. Make it a little smaller. I'm going to kill my simulator because I had my iPhone 8 Plus simulator. I'm just going to use iPhone 8 to target that one and then run it. Now, why is this important? Because if you have a problem, this is the time you're going to see it, right? Right away. So I'm pulling it up just in case we see a problem. All right, that's pretty small to see. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger in my scale. I'm going to go to click actual size. And yeah, that's new with iOS 11 and Xcode 9. Never could do that before, where I could do this with the S simulator. Woohoo! That's pretty awesome. You can actually scale it to the size of your screen now. Yeah. I never could do that before. All right, so that's pretty cool. So you can see that the icons, and if I click on them, it looks like I'm moving between screens, even though there's nothing visual to tell me so. I can tell that I can actually click on these icons, and you should see this now. All right, great. This is a fantastic place to stop and add my stuff to source control, right? Because I want to add my stuff to my code. Now, I did not click on add to source control, and it says create Git repositories. Now, if I was to do this, this has been causing some problems lately, and it definitely didn't work exactly perfectly like I liked last week. Let's see what happens this week. So I'm going to click create Git repositories. For you, it might be something different because you're using Xcode 8 for the most part. But if I do that, it says, okay, all projects are already under source control, which is what I had problems with before. Okay. And what I had to do to fix this problem, right? And I've noticed if I did a commit and push, I could commit locally. These are all the things I changed. So if I do this, if I say something like initial commit, well, there's nothing to push to. I can commit my 54 changes, right? And notice that this is, from a file perspective, there's also hierarchical. That's what's changed. So these, if I make my initial commit, it's going to commit locally. So I click commit 54 files. Yes, nice. But who cares? What about if I want to push? It's going to say, well, there's no remotes. Guess what? The old one had the ability for me to create or or change my remotes. It doesn't allow me to do that here. Up here? Hey, I'm listening to you. If you know something I don't, I'm good. We're all learning. All right. Oh, yeah. That's pretty cool. All right. Oh, yeah. You know what? You're awesome, buddy. Right? All right. So this is what I want. Create. So this is new. So that wasn't like that before. Before it was up here in source control. Now it's here. That's actually better. I like that more to have a tab. So if I click on create remote on GitHub, I'll do that. Now this is neat. It says an account. Oh, what's my account? I can add a GitHub account. That's new too. Never had that before, right? So I'll add mine in there. Now, hopefully some of you are going to be okay with me doing this in Xcode 9 because unfortunately I don't have, I can't backtrack right now. Here's public. I'm going to make it public. Notice that when I sign in, this is what I'm hoping. It actually allows me to pick other organizations, but I can't see them. What did it pick? I can't see the organizations. That's wonderful. Okay, that's a glitch. I can see the other ones, but not ours. Why? Right? Wow. And I can't choose my, I cannot choose the other organizations, right? So I don't know which ones these are. I'm going to assume this one is the right one. It is, because it says Centennial College here at the bottom. I just can't see it. Look, you can see it right here, Centennial College. Yay. And it's going to be called MAPD714 Lesson 6. So it should create it for me automatically from here. Let's see what happens. Done. Let's see what actually works. This is even better than before, other than that little glitch. GitHub, Centennial College, and I should see my new repository right here. Woohoo! That was really quick and beautiful. That's how it should work. Thank you so much for that tip. That was awesome. All right. So take a look at that. So now I have this. I have my stuff right here automatically, and I create it right through GitHub. But what if you don't have Xcode 9? What do you do? How do you fix that up? Well, remember what we did last time. I created my repository first, and then I used command line to connect to it. Or the other option is if you have Xcode 8, you can go in there and modify your remotes. I just can't do it right now, so I can't show you, but I've recorded it in previous videos. All right. Why did I do that first? Once I'm done, I did it because as soon as I created my user interface containers, there's nothing in them, and I connected them to my logic. It's like I have the first part of my project, and that's a great place to start to commit. All right, so that's the first part. Are you with me? Anyone not get any of that stuff? Anyone have a problem doing all this? So if you did, this is a good place to speak up because I'm going to move after this, right? Now I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint for a second, and I got to talk about some new things that we never really talked about before. When we use pickers, it's very interesting that what they do is they use something called, a lot of times, they have two things that they need that are different than every other control. They need something called a delegate. And for those people who don't know what that is, I'll explain that in a second. And they also need something called a data source, right? Because the picker isn't just so easy to set up, right? If I can drag and drop a control from the library, the object library, into my view, that would have been nice. But unfortunately, it needs, like it says here, something called a delegate and a data source, right? And there's two ways to do this. You can actually create a separate file, delegate, and a separate data source, another kind of file if you want, or you can actually look at an actual data source if you want. But we're going to use our view controller to be our delegate and our data source today, right? And this is the first time we're using data sources. We're going to do that again next week when we get together, whenever that is, right? Okay, so, but we're going to do that, and the next week is really, really important after this one because we're actually going to do the first view where you have each row. You ever see this, a table view? Each row is something new. It's like each row is a cell. That's really super important. That is like the most common app you see on the App Store. Some kind of table view, and where you can actually select stuff. And you know, it's kind of building blocks. We're giving you the building blocks to build any app you want with common stuff. So there's a bunch of them we're going to build. So there's the data one, the date, right? There's like we said, a single component with one component in the middle, right? And then there's the multi-component where there's two, one on each side. And then there's something called the dependent component where you have, you know, the cities on one side and the zip codes on the other side. And that's where we're going to use a little plist file that I gave you as well inside your zip archive, right? Because there's a lot of data in here, and I'm not going to write this by hand. We can use the plist file to get data because it doesn't care where you're getting the data from. The final thing that they talk about in the book is this little game, but this is going to take too long to set up for us today, so I'm leaving this out. However, if you have access to the book, you can always try and write this on your own. Okay, again, it's just a custom app. Notice that there's multiple data pickers here. Very interesting the way they do this, but again, out of scope for what we're doing. All right, so let's talk a little bit about delegates and data sources because we need both of those. So really what we're talking about is it's an application delegate. But a delegate is kind of like, I'm going to give control over to a function. That's what I want to. I want you to think about a delegate as. In C#, a delegate is kind of like an anonymous function. All right, that's what it's kind of like. So imagine if I have an anonymous function where I write the body of my code, right, and it triggers. We actually use delegates a lot with event handlers, right? If you use inline event handlers in JavaScript, if you ever see that, and you guys have done that now with Node, right, where you write some kind of event listener, and inside of there you say function, open bracket, close bracket, and it's an anonymous function. Well, it's kind of like a delegate in C#. It kind of writes an anonymous inline function that allows you to perform that event, right? That's a delegate, kind of. And then there's a data source. The data source itself can be anything you want. You can actually connect the data source to something online. You can connect the data source to like a plist file, like we said, like a local file on the machine, on the device. You can also connect it to other things. For example, the data source could be an array, right? We're going to see some of those things today, and we're going to see other data sources as we get into persistent data later in the course, okay? All right, so that's really what delegates and data sources are, which is why pickers are more complex than everything else. Actually, what we just did, when we created our little view, that was pretty complex too, right? Like that was a bit of a setup. We kind of put it together, created our tab bars, moved everything together, created our icons, linked everything together, and guess what? There's a scaffold for that. You pick the other view, there's a tab view, and creates all this whole thing for you, right? But it's good to understand how to add things together, like I said, so that you don't, you're not blindsided if you just use the scaffold and don't know what you're doing, right? Okay, so that's what we kind of set up our data sources and everything else. And if you skip down, it kind of talks about all that stuff, how we put things together, and the icons we just use. We control, drag things around to make this view happen, which you can't see right now. And we realigned all the views so they connected with the identity inspector, right? And once we did all that kind of stuff, we're actually ready to do our first code, which is down here. So what we want to do is two more things. This is our code, but inside of our date picker right here, we need to have actually a picker icon, a picker control in here in the first place. Now there's two basic type of picker controls. I'm just going to kind of make some more room here so you guys can see this. I'm going to pull up the object library, and if I go picker, right, like this, there's two, date picker and picker view, right? Date picker is the first one, and what I want you to do is drag and drop the date picker control right inside of your view, right here, right at the top. Okay, so that's the first part. Don't worry if it hugs the top, because guess what? What's going to happen is going to come inside of the other one, right? So it's going to be pushed down anyway. All right, so that's the first thing, the date view. And notice that there's a couple of options here on the right. It says the date is the current date. You can actually set a custom date if you really want to, like tomorrow or whatever. But current date means that's the day that it's going to show right here, okay? I also want to have some constraints. So a minimum date, you can actually put a minimum date in here and a maximum date, and leave those as default right now, okay? Those two things, current date. And then I'm going to drag a button. I'm going to take a button control. Let's do that. I'm going to take a button control and drag and drop it in the middle of our screen here, right? And we're going to call this button select. We're going to, click the select button to do something. That's what this does. So far, so good? So that's our first one. I'm not going to finish the logic yet. What am I going to do? I'm going to finish my user interface on every one of them. Now, to finish my user interface on this one, to make it quick, right? I'm going to go to my editor, and I'm going to go to my resolve auto layout issues, and I'm going to reset to suggested constraints, all right, for this one. Now, did it do everything I wanted to? Yes, it did. I don't care about it being responsive or adaptive to different screens right now. I just want it to work. Okay. Let's do the same thing with another picker, right? So I'm going to go just type in picker over here. And instead of the date picker, I'm going to check this one, this picker view one. And I'm inside the single view now. All right. So I went from the date. I want to go to the pick this other single view controller one. I'm going to take this picker view, not the date picker view, the picker view, and drag it over. And again, I'm going to kind of align it right to the top like this. And again, I want to grab a button, same as we did before, right? I'm going to drag and drop this button underneath here and align it pretty much where the other one was. Again, you can see that they're kind of aligned here. I'm just doing that on purpose. I'm going to make this button the select button as well. This next one. I don't know how that happened. I probably double clicked. That's what I probably did by accident. Okay. All right. Next, we got these two. I want to go to the next one. So I'm going to go back to this one down here. This is the double one. Same thing. Grab the picker first. It's all the same, right? View. Drag this over. We're going to fix the constraints in a second. And then grab the button. And drag and drop it in there, approximately right here. Doesn't have to be perfect. And make this select. And the last one is the dependent one. Again, I'm going to grab the picker view. Drag and drop it in here. And then I'm going to grab the button. Oh, that was nice. Then I'm going to grab the button and drag and drop it so it's probably almost the same as the other one. Yay. And change this to select. There, I did all of them. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my editor and I'm going to go to resolve auto layout issues. And if you notice, this is all views independent picker. I'm going to do them all. I forgot the other ones. So I'm going to go reset to suggested constraints. I'll do that one. I'll click this one. I'll go to the editor, resolve auto layout issues, reset to suggested constraints for that one too. Notice I'm not finishing the custom one. I'll leave that to you guys to do. And then I'll click this one and I'll go to editor and I'm going to go to resolve auto layout issues and go down to the bottom, reset to suggested constraints. So I've got all those ones. Guess what? If I was to run my code right now, run the app, it wouldn't show any of the pickers. Here's the reason why. The pickers won't show up until they're configured. They're not configured, they don't show up if you check it in the view. So we're going to do kind of one at a time, right? But what I want to see is that the buttons are all there. Okay, so that will work. So if I click on play, right? And I bring up my little simulator. All right, so here's this, the date one worked. That kind of showed up, and I can move it around, right? Notice this one's okay, but I can't really do anything with it because I haven't connected it. But the date kind of came up, and we need to adjust it a little bit. My single one, my double one, and these other ones, the buttons showed up, and my custom one, I didn't put anything in there. So that kind of was the stuff that I wanted to see. You can see that this works. Right? And again, I probably need to kind of pull this down a little bit, but for now, for our example, who cares? Right? So that was good. So that made that what we did kind of worked out. It was okay. Now, once we've got our picker, we need to do some more work. But before we get there, I'm going to do another commit. Right? I'm going to go back to source control. I'm going to go back to commit. And you can see that I've added, some files have changed. The main one has changed is the storyboard. And I'm going to say added picker controls to storyboard. Okay, and I'm going to commit and push my changes up to GitHub right away. Done. Now you have my changes. Yes. Are you all with me? I'll come back to you guys in a second. Okay? All right, so this is good. So now what I need to do is I want to connect. So I'm just going to get rid of this thing for a second because we don't need the inspector or the this debugging window right here. And you know what? Truthfully, I don't even need this part. All I want is the storyboard to come up. I want to click on my first one right here, right? And I'm going to bring up the assistant editor, right? So there's my assistant editor. And all I have right here is a couple of things here, all right? I want to add in my picker control, right? So I want to control drag underneath my date picker view controller. I want to kind of control drag my picker control, this one here, underneath here. Now, you might think that action would be the right one, but actually what we're going to make is an outlet in this particular case, right? So we're going to leave it an outlet, and we're just going to call it date picker. Date picker. Connect. That kind of creates a little outlet. Remember what outlets are, as a refresher, they are references to the user interface controls. That's all they're doing, okay? That's what this is. Now the button is where all our logic is going to come into play, right? And I want our button to kind of go down in here. So I'm going to click on the select button, and I'm going to control drag that in here as well. But this one is not an outlet, it's an action, right? Definitely a UI button action. And we're going to call on button pressed. That's what it is, on button pressed. Now I think in the book I might call it something else, like on button clicked. But really you're not clicking, you're pressing. So that's why I called it on button pressed. Notice that there's different kinds of events. You can choose touch up inside. There's also other ones. I'm going to click that one and click connects, which gives us our little stub of a file, right? That's what you should have right now. So this is where all the logic happens in here for our date. So two things I have. I have a date picker outlet, and I have a on button pressed action. Okay. Actions are the analog to an event handler, right? That's what they are. The event listener is triggered when you press the button. Okay. But this is the actual handler itself. The event listener is listed, right, inside of this little control. So if I actually click on the button again, you can see that the events are listed right here, right? So any of the events, notice this is the one that's been listed. This is the touch up inside event, which is connected to this control right here, okay? Just to give you guys that refresher. Okay, cool. What does it say for us to do? We're gonna do all this part, right? Now this is up on the PowerPoint, but I wanna show you this, what it is. So let's talk about this again. When I use lets, what's the difference between lets and vars in Swift? Can anyone know that, what that is? In Swift, let is a constant, not so in JavaScript. In Swift, let is a constant, right? Actually, in some older languages too. I remember it being part of, if I'm not wrong, Pascal, for anyone who knows that language. But I'm dating myself. No one teaches that language anymore, right? But back in the day, let used to be a constant as well. And we're actually going to do two things. We're going to say this, we're going to create a few variables, but these variables are constants, right? So let's do the first two. So let date be the date picker dot date. Okay, so we're going to do that first. I'm going to switch back. So I'm going to start typing. So let date is equal to the date picker. Notice that we're getting a reference to date picker dot date. If that's the date function itself of whatever that date is. And if that's not what I wanted. Okay, that's okay. That is really odd and imprecise. What happened there? Woohoo! Okay, let's go back to that. I don't know what happened there. I must have touched something crazy, right? Let's go back to the main storyboard. And let's go back to this. And let's go back to this. Yay. Okay, so I don't need this anymore. All right, so this is good. So what I tried to do was type and then it erased. That was nice. Did I do something different? Did it? Put it somewhere else. Undo. Nope. Yeah, that's wrong. And why isn't this allowing me to type now? Oh yeah, I love it. There we go. Manual control. What I was going to say was this initialization of immutable value date, it says, it gives us a little bit of an error here. If you notice, it says, was never used, consider replacing it with the assignment to underscore or removing it altogether. We don't want to do that. We're just not using it. I want to print this out just to see what this does. So I'm going to print out the date, right? That's what this is. I want to print out the date when I press the button. Okay, so that's what's happening here. Let's try this out one step at a time to see what we're getting. This is really good for understanding. Okay, so let's say post play. We're going to run it. And all I care about is the date, which, by the way, is the first thing that should pop up. Yeah, here's the date. Okay, now what I want to do down here is when I press select, it should give me the date. There it is, right? So it gives it to me in, 10, 11, and then the time, which is kind of wrong, right? 23:38. Why is this the time? Well, because it's the time inside the device, inside that device, right, isn't our time. It's the time on this device. And for me to go back to the device, if I want to press on settings, right, this is like any other device, right? You should be able to go into the regular device. And if you see that there's about accessibility, keyboard, languages, and region, right? Notice it says United States. Look at the time. It says 12:34 a.m. That ain't right. Right? So if I go United States, well, that's not where we are. We're in Canada. We can actually do all this work. Canada. Right, that's the first thing done. So we're in Canada. Continue. Yes, we would like to change our region. Hold on. And once we've changed our region, right, to Canada, our calendar is Georgian. What about our date? Where do we get that inside of our controls? Accessibility, a keyboard, language and region dictionary. Let's keep going. Where else can you see that? Can you change the date? It says 7:39 now, right? Didn't say 7:39 before, right? It said 12 something. All right, let's try that little app again. So I'm going to switch over to our date, which is this one. And if I click select, oh yeah, it terminated my app. Hold on a second. Let's try that again. So stop the simulator and run the simulator again. Hopefully it won't kill my simulator again. 740. I should see, well, no, it didn't do it again, 23:40. And I know that my time shows 7:40, but my time on my app, on my phone does not. I think I remember how to change date. It's automatic, right? It's tied into the cell signal, right? So, but let's see if I can figure it out here, if it gives me the option. And there's probably some kind of control that I'm missing that I forgot how to do. But that's why we're getting that weird thing, and I want to point it out to you so you guys aren't like, hey, wait a minute, our date's not that. And yeah, so that's one thing that this doesn't have. If I go back to here, notice that I've got all these, right? If I go to general, but one thing I don't have down here is date and time. I don't have that, right? No. No reset. Reset will reset, right? So yeah, it just doesn't have it here. And I know there's a way of setting it up. I just don't know what it is. But yeah, on the phone itself, you do see a date and time option, okay? But for now, for us, we know what's happening. We know what's going on with this thing when we're in here, right? And that's interesting. That's asking for AirPlay. This is all new stuff, by the way. Okay, yes.
Isn't it printing like GMT time? Is it before?
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I'm saying that's not my time, right? That's the time on the device, right? Even though it says 7:41. I don't think so. I think if we actually took a device from the cabinet and you tried it on the device, it'd work, no problem. It's just that it's printing this because of the time. What was that? That's right. Okay, I'll come back to you in a sec. Hold on a sec. All right, so we got this part. This is the first part, and we know that that's what this does. So the date itself, even though it's a constant, it shows us the current date that we pick. That's the current date we picked, right? And to try this out again, if I was to rerun this thing, right? Oops, I ran it without the function. Let's try this again. Print date, sorry. Let's try that again. So stop and start. I forgot to change the function so to let you know. All right, so if I change this to something else, if I want to go, to Saturday, the 14th, right? And I want to change the date, let's say to, I don't know, 12 noon, right? What it should do is show T, right? So select, and there it is. There's a 4 o'clock GMT, but it is showing the 14th, which is good. So clock's a little weird, but this is good. So it does align whatever we type in there. And remember, we didn't make an event handler. This is automatic. It's actually giving us the time, whatever we select right away. Next, message. Let the message be the date and time you selected is blank, whatever it's going to be, right? And notice that this backslash and open bracket, close bracket date, that's interpolation. That's how we're doing interpolation in Swift again. So again, it's the message. So let me just take this away and start typing that in. So I'll say let message equal to, and again, in brackets, like it says here, the date and time you selected is. So the, date and time you selected is, then backslash, open bracket, close bracket, and then whatever time we want, which is date. This way of doing things, right, with the backslash, that's what interpolation is all about, right? And actually, I'll just get rid of, give me more room to type and get rid of this for a second. All right. So we notice it says, hey, the same warning message comes up saying, hey, you haven't used date, but you haven't used message, but you've made message. Do you really need it? Apple's trying to give you a chance to save yourself some trouble. Okay, so far so good. This is what the message is that we're going to pop up, right? Next. And this is weird. Now we're making an alert. And we didn't do this last time. We had a chance to make alerts. We didn't kind of put it together. We're making a new alert, which is of type UI alert controller. And we have a bunch of different kinds of options we have to fill in. Okay? So let's do that. So we'll say let alert equals to a UI alert controller. And if I open up the brackets, it tells me there's quite a few things we want. And here's where I want to kind of go down to one of these. Title, the message, the preferred style, all this stuff is the stuff that I want to kind of put in there. So I'm going to kind of hit this one. So for the title, I'm just going to put this down on different different lines here, just like it has inside of the PowerPoint. You can split it off like this, no problem, because Swift doesn't really care about that, right? Making it like this for now. So now we have strings, a couple strings for title and message and a preferred style. Well, what does it say here? The title is date and time selected, so we'll put that in there as a string. So date and time selected. The message is the message, the one we just made. And we can put that in there, message. And the preferred style is .alert. So now this is a enumeration. If I put dot, you can see that there's two, alert sheet and alert. An alert sheet is something that comes up. An alert is like a pop-up that you would see in the web somewhere, like a little message box. By the way, there's nothing wrong with using alerts in your code for diagnosis, for debugging. But please don't try and use them as little as possible because they're really annoying in a user interface, right? Okay, so we've got this part, this let. Now, typically coding style. Me, when I do my coding style, I do this. I kind of split off these these lines. In the book, they put them together because they have no room. So they put them together so you can kind of get that little code block and then copy and paste it into a PowerPoint, right? But in real life, I would never code like that. I would code like this. Give myself space so I can read my code, right? All right, the next one is another thing. So there's the alert and there's an action, which is of type UI alert action. All right, so let action is of type UI alert action. And I'm going to pick this one, right? Not the first one. There's two constructors. There's this constructor and there's this constructor. I want the second one. Just like we did last time, I'm going to split these up over different lines so you can see them better. So style and handler. We'll talk about the handler in a second. Okay, so title. What's the title of this thing? So there's the alert, there's the action, and the title is "That's So True." All right, I don't know what that means, but sure. That's so true. So some kind of title. And the style is the default style. Again, another enumeration. So if I go dot, default, cancel, or destructive. If I kind of hover over, you can see that apply the default style to the actions button. Apply a style that indicates the action might change or delete data. So it'll actually change the style of my little pop-up. But I want this one, default. Okay. Now this is the weird one. Handler. And take a look what it looks like. It looks like this. Some kind of alert action, right? A handler with a little dash greater than sign and void. What the heck is that? Well, if you guys are using Node right now, and maybe you've been looking at the new, or if you've looked at Lambda expressions, this looks very similar to a Lambda expression. But actually, in Swift, it means some kind of method or delegate that returns void. That's what's going in there. You can write it inline if you want. I can write an inline anonymous function. That's what it is. It's going to go in there. Or I can point it to another handler, another method. I can just make a reference to another method that actually does the event handling. Okay? For us, we're not going to have an event handling for this. We're just going to put nil. Oops. Nil. So we'll just go here and put nil. Here. There is no event handler. It's just going to pop up this alert action. So here's our alert controller. Here's our alert action. We need both those two things for an alert to happen. Right? When I press the button, the done button or the OK button, it's going to do something. And now we're actually going to add the alert, right? We're going to make an alert happen, right? We're going to add the action to the alert. So we're going to say alert.add action. And we're going to point to the action called action. Now, why is this? What the heck is this alert and action? And here's our add action. Remember what we did before. Whenever we do dot add anything to an alert, think about an alert as a container of itself. And I'm adding a child to the container. The child is the action, right? So I'm adding the action. So the action is going to actually pop up some kind of message, right, when I press on the button. So the actual title might be date and time selected, right? And it's going to show the message, whatever the date and time is, right? Right here. And then it's going to ask me to press the button. The last line here is present. So I'm going to present. Now, this is something that might be different in Swift 4, just FYI, right? Let's see how this works. So I'll say present. See a present option? Here's one. Well, let's just start typing and see what happens. So here's my view controller present, right? So this is my alert. And then the next part is animated, right? Which is true. I'm animating it. As well as what happens on completion. Nothing. Typically, if anything is going to give you trouble, it's this stuff in Swift 4. But luckily, in this particular case, it did not. So far, so good. Are you with me? All right. How about any other code? We have any other code we have to put in? Yeah, we do, right? We actually have to put inside of the in our view did load, we've got to create another method called date, right? Which is of type NSDate. And this is interesting because what this will do is, remember NS, what does it stand for? Next step. Whenever I hear NS anything, it means, hey, Objective C, I need you again. Swift, I'm not good enough yet. I need you. I need Objective C, this foundation class, which is called NSDate. And what I'm doing is I'm actually setting date here in my view did load to something, right? To whatever the NSDate is going to be, almost like a non-nil value, right? And then I'm going to set the date as whatever this date is, right? So that way when it starts, I get some kind of date happening. And this is a precaution because sometimes when the view loads, you get some really weird things. So again, I'm going to say let date is equal to NSDate. Remember, there is no new keyword that I need to use here, just like in C++, right? Or in C, I don't have to use the new keyword, right? And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say that my datePicker.setDate, datePicker.setDate. Now, setDate is a method that I can specify what the date is going to be. So date, let's undo that. Date. So date, and animated true. Or is it false? I can't remember. False. All right, so that is kind of cool. Now, here's something that's interesting. It says that extraneous argument, even though I have my date in there, it's asking me just to do this. NSDate does not implicitly convert. See what I'm talking about? NSDate is not implicitly converted. All right. Here we go. Fix as date. And that's what it says in our code, date as date, right? Because it won't implicitly convert this type that I'm getting in there as a date type, which is kind of weird because we made it date right here. Again, you know, Swift does things in its own way, and we're downcasting to a type date, and this should pretty much work. All right, wow, lots of work to get the date picker working. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to go back to run this thing now, and let's see if it works. Cool, so I'm going to kind of pick tomorrow's date, let's say. And we'll click some other time too, just to make it different. So we'll say 1:55, sure, 1:55, and click select. It says date and time selected. The date and time you selected is 2017, 10/12, 1 + 4, 5:55 in the afternoon, right? That's so true. And that's it. So that's the action button. That's so true, right? There we go. Every time I change it, it changes. So why is this really good? Why is this picker neat? I mean, and yours doesn't work. The reason why this picker is so neat is because we need dates a lot, right? That's why they're showing it. I'm going to look that up. We're going to do that in the break. Let's look it up right now. Okay. Any questions around this one? Okay, good. We did the date picker. Pretty much we're complete. We're going to stop this. And now we're going to go to our source control. And we're going to commit and push. We're going to go to commits. And we're going to say completed date scene. Right? We're going to push to remote and click commit to files and push. All right, so I've kind of gone for a bit of more. It's like 8 o'clock now. Started off around 6:30. I went about an hour and a half. I think it's a great place to stop and take a short break. When we come back, we'll complete this thing. In the meanwhile, I'll try and find the problem with the dates, right? So let's take a short break, let's say 15 minutes to get some coffee. And if there's available, if you want to go hit the McDonald's, right, to grab something else, you can do that and come back, okay?